for the moment. I'll leave it up, ready to go. Hi guys. Hello. Bonjour. Comment slava.
Oh, get you, man.
Oh, Ali Watson's. He's in like a shot. Look at that,
I haven't filtered Facebook out. I didn't have it open actually. Hi, Jen. Hey, Jack. Hi, Jen. Slowest afternoon, only 6 watching at the moment, David.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Up to 8.
Yeah, just let them get their seats. Don't lose that. Hi guys, you have to forgive me the day I'm suffering with man flu. I'll do my best. If I do start to cough, I'll switch the microphone off so you're not treated to that. I've done my COVID test and it's negative. I've got a clear negative. So it's not that. I've just got man flu.
Right, good afternoon, folks. 37 years on board so far.
That'll do. Seriously, that'll do. Let's proceed. All right. Evelyn, thanks for asking, darling. I'm feeling pretty shit, but that's beside the point. I'm here. I asked David to see if I pass inspection. He went, yeah, you pass inspection. That's good enough for me.
You're not on the fucking blokes in the corner, you pass inspection, man. Anyway, good afternoon, folks. We're going to start off by playing the compressed version of the Supreme Court ruling. I did look for the 3-minute judgment, 3-minute odd judgment in total, but as you know, the judgment was broke by explanations and what their decisions were based on before they went to the actual ruling. So this compressed bit is the ruling, basically, and then we'll go on to have a look at the implications of it for not just Scotland but the other parts of the United Kingdom. One of the things that was missed here was a new body was created by the Supreme Court. So let's rock it.
Well, listen to this first. It's just you've heard this, but it's just a reminder of what was said. Okay.
I should say that we are pleased that the court has been able to give judgment within a shorter time than I had indicated might be necessary. That's partly because the court is unanimous, which considerably shortens the time required, and partly because the judgment has been prioritised over less urgent matters. The purpose of the proposed bill is to hold a lawful referendum on the question of whether Scotland should become an independent country. That is, on ending the Union and ending the sovereignty of the United Kingdom Parliament in relation to Scotland. The effects of legislation.
Right. What he said was, on ending the Union and on ending the sovereignty that the Westminster has over Scotland. And that is wrong. That is wrong. Because we have the sovereignty over the king, and we are allowed to remove that king, as can be seen by the claim of right that he had to read out in his oath, right? And he gives his sovereignty to Westminster. So therefore, Westminster do not have sovereignty over us, per se, right? And in his judgment, to actually bring that in and make that judgment, that is wrong. But let's continue from there, David, all right?
For the purpose of deciding whether it relates to a reserved matter, are not confined to its legal effects, but include its practical effects. a lawfully held referendum would have important political consequences relating to the Union and the United Kingdom Parliament. Its outcome would possess the authority in a constitution and political culture founded upon democracy of a democratic expression of the view of the Scottish electorate. It would either strengthen or weaken the democratic legitimacy of the Union and of the United Kingdom's Parliament's sovereignty over Scotland, depending on which view prevailed. And it would either support or undermine the democratic credentials of the independence movement.
Was it there, David? Right, okay. So basically he's discussing there is nonsense. He's basically discussing that if it was a referendum, the Scottish public would vote one way or the other, and the Union would either live or die. So all of that wording that he's put in there is total and utter nonsense. All right? When you go, David.
It's therefore clear that the proposed bill has more than a loose or consequential connection with the reserved matters of the Union of Scotland and England and the sovereignty of the United Kingdom Parliament.
Now, once again, we're talking about sovereignty of the United Kingdom Parliament.
Yep.
The United Kingdom Parliament holds the King's sovereignty. It's the term is the Crown's sovereignty in Parliament, and they only hold that sovereignty for the length of a Parliament. And we've got to remember that the King can dissolve a Parliament. Yep, it's all to do with the arrangement that was made for the Commons to take over the day-to-day running of the United Kingdom from the Crown, the Victoria era. So let's go on for there.
Yeah.
For all these reasons, which are set out more fully in the judgment, the Court unanimously concludes that the proposed bill does relate to reserved matters. Accordingly, in the absence of any modification of the definition of reserved matters by an order in Council under Section 30 of the Scotland Act or otherwise, the Scottish Parliament does not have the power to legislate for a referendum on Scottish independence. The Court will now adjourn.
Right. David,
before we move on, I want to talk about the importance of that to the peoples of other parts of these islands.
Okay.
Because what he did was, we know that the Westminster Parliament runs the day-to-day of the Four Nations, supposedly, right? But if a Scottish independence referendum impinges on the sovereignty of the Westminster Parliament, then so would a referendum on English independence impinge on the sovereignty of the Westminster Parliament, because it would impinge on Westminster's rule over the rest of the UK. So basically, that judgment trapped the English people as well as the Welsh, the Scottish, the Northern Irish people have got an international treaty that allows them to have a say every 7 years. But people in England don't quite understand the consequences of what was said. What was said was any part of the United Kingdom basically wanting to leave would impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over it, and that would include England. Because if the people of England took independence, then there's every chance they would want to rewrite the way the government's done, and they maybe even want to get rid of the monarchy. But absolutely everything that was said to this point either robbed the peoples of their rights, especially the Scottish people, at this point in time, but it basically has the same effect for each constituent part. If the Scottish people can't have a legal referendum because it would impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over them, then neither could the English people.
Yeah.
When you take that train of thought to its end. Because Westminster's the Parliament of of Great Britain is not just the Parliament of the United Kingdom. So the implications of what he said for the people's right across these islands have to be understood, especially in England, because their right to take back control has also been removed by this body called the Westminster Parliament, which, of course, claims to have sovereignty. It doesn't have any sovereignty. The people of Scotland, under our constitutional arrangements, have sovereignty, signed by the King, agreed to by the King, and the people of England are subjects of the King. So where's this Westminster sovereignty come from? Because the correct term is the Crown's sovereignty in Parliament.
In actual fact, is that not perhaps an interesting thought? Now, basically, by his words, he's blocked a referendum on Scottish independence, right? We know that. But that doesn't stop us running a referendum on euthanasia or getting rid of the monarch. So what if Scotland removed the monarch as head of state for Scotland, as having any power over Scotland? What then? How would the sums add up as regards any form of sovereignty passed through the Westminster Parliament in any way work for Scotland? I don't think it would.
This takes us back to the plebiscite election thing, doesn't it? Your MPs allegedly carry our sovereignty into Parliament down that road.
Yeah.
So therefore, that gives weight to the idea of a Westminster election as the plebiscite election. Of course, you and I think it should be a more democratic process than that. And because we're Democrats to our toes, so we believe the Scottish referendum is the way to go, because it gives the majority of Scots 16 and over a say in their own future. And it also gives other residents here who intend to live here a say over the future as well.
Yeah.
But as I say, that's the arguments. As I say, but when you take a train of thought all the way through, and as I say, because this precedence has been set that anybody wanting to leave the Union would, and that includes England, impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over it, that there's no way of getting out of this Union. It's locked in. By that Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah.
The first minister, the first reaction was, so England can vote for independence, but Scotland can't because it'll impinge on Westminster's sovereignty. But when you take actually his judgment and take the train of thought all the way through, then that separate entity that is Westminster and the establishment can have its royal sovereignty impinged on.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, David, can you pop up the
yes,
my judgment on his judgment?
Yeah, certainly. I certainly shall. There you go.
I'll read it out to you, Rudy. There cannot be a situation in a voluntary union where one side can prevent the other side from leaving that union. Therefore, in such a union, powers regarding the Constitution would not be reserved under any circumstances unless one side of the union requires and needs something from the other side and are prepared to lock in the other side by underhanded means such as the wording of the Scotland Act 1998. To have drafted and brought in such legislation between two countries would be considered as a bad contract or unfair contract and would be thrown out by most courts. For the Supreme Court to actually create a situation where the democracy of one country in a union with another was denied is simple oppression. And I'll just give you the English Oxford Dictionary definition. Oppression is prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or exercise of authority. And therefore, Scotland is well and truly oppressed. However, Lord Reid of the Supreme Court actually added to that oppression. And his judgment and the judgment of his colleagues should be taken to task in an international court. However, I don't have time to blooming give for all that. I want some way where we get out of this bloody union. And as far as I'm concerned, plebiscite election seems to be the sensible way to do it. Now, there is wording within the Scotland Act that allows us to proceed. And as far as I can see, although I would have to ask people who understand the legalese of this, is whether Nicola Sturgeon would have to resign temporarily to allow the 28 days to pass, and then if no First Minister is replaced, then obviously the Scottish election would be called. To be honest with you, that's about the most straightforward way I can see it happening. I've heard other people saying, well, in that case, wouldn't the Westminster want to come in and take over Holyrood, based upon that, like Stormont. But the thing is, with Stormont, it's a power sharing agreement. It doesn't have the same setup as the Holyrood in regard to Westminster. So them coming in and taking us over, I don't see that as being possible, but I'm happy for someone else to come in and give us their thoughts.
Margaret's saying they need to be clearer on Scotland's position in the Union. If not an equal partner, then we are obviously a colony, and we need to be asked to be decolonised. There's many what you actually said, Bob. And that's the point of this programme that people really have to grasp in what he said. Basically, he was exerting Charles's power over everybody.
Yeah.
Because when he talks about parliamentary sovereignty, Westminster sovereignty over Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, they're actually talking about the Crown's power, the Crown's sovereignty in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
We've just basically had a royal takeover without the royal being involved, because the ministers can cut them out through the Henry VIII powers they give themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the establishment has taken a strong grip on this union. And that includes the people of England, and they've got to understand that. And they don't seem to be getting the idea that their human rights are slowly being stripped from them anyway. As we know, with some of the heinous acts that have been introduced in that road, Police Crimes Courts and Sentencing Act, and which banned noisy or annoying protest. And now we've got the Public Order Act coming in, which is going to start jailing activists. And then we had, of course, the new form of terrorism called the economic terrorist. So if I hold up a road, or truck drivers think diesel's too high, so we get out and we slow a motorway down for 4 or 5 hours, that's economic terrorism, because the wheels of commerce are either slowed or jammed or stopped. So the sort of laws that have been introduced down that road without the people keeping their eye on the ball are actually quite broad, giving the establishment a huge amount of power, and the Supreme Court ruling over us, and the Supreme Court ruling cemented that. And the people of England have to understand that it means the exact same for them as what it does for us.
Well, if you look at any judgment by any court, if a judgment is made and it is basically wrong because of several points that you've just mentioned, right, then as far as I'm concerned, that judgment needs throwing out.
Yeah.
And these guys need to either go back and go, well, we were wrong there, right, and make another judgment, or they need to take the task by another court. Yeah? The European Court, Justice. I could mention several other courts that they could be taking the task by. But yeah, again, it's this thing. You get in a courtroom, you might as well just set the timer for 10 years or 5 years or whatever, right? I don't want to wait that long.
Yeah, the other thing that was said, see, this sets a precedence which would apply to England, Wales, Northern, England, Wales, and Scotland, right? Say Northern Ireland slightly different.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that was said, which was in the wasn't in the actual judgment, it was in the description of the reasons why, was that Scotland didn't meet the criteria for self-determination because we were now oppressed. Well, that sets a precedence as well. If the people of England want to become sovereign and break free of Westminster, you know, the same thing applies.
Well, yeah, again, I'll read the words out. Oppression, prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or exercise of authority. That's three different bits.
Now, so the people of England say they want independence, right? Mm-hmm. Westminster being established and say, no, you can't. It would impinge on your sovereignty over England. Yeah. You know, and they already believe they're subjects. They think it's the king's sovereignty anyway, right?
That's right.
So, the people then look at it and go, we have a right to have a referendum on becoming independent for the rest of the UK, and the Supreme Court's going to tell them, no, you don't. You're not oppressed. You have access to political political mechanisms for your cultural and economic growth.
Yeah.
So they don't meet the criteria either for self-determination in England, according to the Supreme Court ruling. People have to understand the implications for other parts of the UK in that ruling.
Yeah, but Mark Telfer's put up an interesting wee thing there. Do you want to pop it up, David? It's very, very top. I honestly think the Supreme Court International Law Translation regards colony status was out with their competence and political. Absolutely. Absolutely. The Supreme Court made a judgment on the sovereignty of Westminster that was wrong, right? And therefore, they were speaking outside of their competence. That's also my take as well.
Aye, this is the problem with the international courts, of course. You know, unless they're willing to make sanctions. Yeah. I mean, the international court, then the UK Supreme Court, both ruled that Westminster should return the Chagos Islands to Chagos people. The establishment just went, no, get it up bases.
What did they do? They formed up a rental agreement for America. The people of the Chagos Islands lost. Right?
Yeah, so it start again against another nation.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is the establishment isn't above ignoring international law, as we've seen during Brexit.
Yeah.
So, as I say, but I did want to talk about the implications for the other parts of the United Kingdom, because we have a lot of audience in England.
Yeah.
And the people of England have to understand what this ruling means. It sets a precedence. It sets a precedence that Westminster is sovereign above us all. And if they don't fancy breaking up the UK, then it can't be broke up, no matter what the people of England, Wales, Scotland have to say about it.
Therefore, it's that the actual the resolution has to be challenged.
The democratic never mind the democratic thing. Although that's important, especially in Scotland, having their democracy cost, and that should worry the people in England as well. But the criteria that they set for meeting the standards for self-determination doesn't apply to England either. Because according to that Supreme Court ruling, we're not oppressed. So therefore, they have no right to a referendum on independence either, because they're not oppressed by Westminster, so it's claimed.
Yeah.
You know.
Now on Sunday, as you know, if you've seen any of the ads that have been popping out on Facebook, we've got Angus Brennan McNeill, who was basically, if you like, you could call him the architect of a Scottish plebiscite election. I hope you'll all.
Architect, I would say advocate.
I hope you'll all join us for that discussion. That will be utterly fascinating. Hopefully, this thing will get out of my body and let me to think properly, right? But the plebiscite seems to be the way, and we've just got to decide which is better, a Westminster plebiscite or a Holyrood plebiscite. Personally, and David agrees, the Holyrood plebiscite is the way to go, and we need to look at how and make that happen.
What do you call it? Look at how the Falkland Islands were treated, dragged out the EU without even getting a vote. Yeah, but you know, that might have further backed up everybody else's view that leaving the EU is a bad idea.
Look at Gibraltar. Gibraltar actually voted 97% to stay in the EU, and I was there just after the vote, and I actually sat in a little bar right next door to the campaign headquarters where they were voting to stay in the EU, right? And I spoke to a few people, and they were absolutely disgusted with the fact that they had been removed from the EU. People in Gibraltar have got a far bigger axe to grind as far as that's concerned, because they're actually right against one of the EU members. Yeah.
Right.
We've got water in about us, you know, where they are absolutely, they rely on working with the Spaniards, right? And
as Ali Watts has pointed out, since then, Gibraltar has been given the right to negotiate the range of circumstances, you know. But as I say, I did really want to speak to the audience in London today to think about seriously. I know they weren't paying any attention to this, and they bloody well should have been.
Yeah.
The Great British Parliament is the overarching body, and that Great British Parliament holds the same power over England. So if the people of England want a plebiscite on independence, then they better hope that their MPs are going to agree to give up the assets of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, otherwise they're not getting it. And they can challenge the government in court and they'll get the same ruling that we got. Simple as that. And they really have to understand the precedence that was set there. And setting the United Kingdom Parliament up as the important body and not the people's.
There's also one other thing. If there's a plebiscite election, we cannot allow any smell or whiff of it being, okay, you won that plebiscite election, we'll allow you to have a referendum. No, that cannot happen. It's got to be, it's a plebiscite election, and people have declared independence in other countries based on the outcome of a plebiscite election. We cannot allow them to gerrymander us into a referendum after the outcome of a plebiscite election.
Stephen, I think you're wrong there, but I'll put your statement up for people to see. I'm sure the people of England are becoming very aware of Scotland's wealth and propping up England. Fear is death will take control, and they won't want to let Scots go through a fear smear. As I say, I'm not talking about Scotland here. I'm talking about England and Wales, really.
Yeah.
See, I'm talking about the effect that this ruling has in other parts of the UK. That's what we said we would discuss on Sunday when we said we're putting this programme out. To say the Supreme Court has termed the UK Parliament as the most important thing, and its sovereignty over the peoples of these islands is its most important thing.
Yeah.
And anything impinging on the power of Westminster over the four constituent parts of these islands, excluding Northern Ireland to an extent through the Good Friday Agreement, being an international treaty and the right to ask a question every 7 years if they want to. What they're telling us, telling Scotland applies just equally, because Westminster is now Westminster itself is a separate entity. It's no England's Parliament that's been appointed out by the Supreme Court. It's no Scotland's Parliament that's been appointed out by the Supreme Court. It's no Wales's Parliament who's being appointed to the Supreme Court. It's Great Britain's Parliament.
Well, we've often said that what the people of England want, the people of England get. And, why is it we would be bothered with necessarily getting the people of England riled up over this because it affects them as much as it affects us, right? It's quite simple. It's to put pressure on Westminster in every way possibly can be, right? As far as Scotland's concerned, we should have the right to choose whether we want to be a part of this union or not. That's straightforward.
Hold on. England and Wales should have that right today. The Supreme Court denied them that right.
Yeah.
Because it's Westminster's sovereignty over these places. They don't have personal sovereignty. They don't have the right to self-determination because they're not oppressed, apparently.
Yeah.
You see, I really need the people of the rest of these islands to understand the implications of this ruling for them as well.
Yeah.
And the people of England won't meet that criteria for breaking up the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland either.
But to what end? To what end?
Because the UK Parliament would lose power over the other three places because England wanted to leave. And the argument of the Supreme Court was the UK Parliament, stroke the Great British Parliament, stroke Westminster, would lose sovereignty over Scotland if it wanted to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, the same thing has got to apply to at least three of the other four constituent parts of the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And the jackboots just come in for the establishment on everybody's neck. So, we're the people of England. We tell our MPs that, hey, we want to break free of Scotland and Wales. And the MPs know that England can't survive without the assets of Scotland and Wales. The people don't because the lies have been told over the years. You're going to throw up the same ruling that was thrown up against the Scots.
Mm-hmm.
It would impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over England.
Yeah, they've created
that will really confuse the people of England because they think the King's sovereign. Yeah. Technically, of course, he is King's sovereign Parliament.
That's why we've talked about in the past that it's out there, it's left field, right? Is that King Charles could actually order the Westminster to provide a Section 30 so that we could have a referendum. Why would he do such a thing? Well, I assure you, I'll be at the front of the queue after independence to get rid of the bugger or get rid of the monarchy. Right?
Let's get this one sorted out. What would happen if a group such as Liberation Scotland or Salvo ran their own referendum? They can't. They don't have any legal authority to run one.
Sorry, that's not possible for several reasons, and I think it would be good, Evelyn, if you had a wee look at why that wasn't the case. By all means, come back and give me let's have a conversation between you and me, all right? But don't do it.
Junie Kay has got this one right. Right. By the Supreme Court ruling, well, you heard it, so you can't argue with it. Westminster owns all four nations. I'm not quite sure that's how it's supposed to work. Well, actually, they had the title deeds and they'll decide when they hand them back by that Supreme Court ruling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure whether that Supreme Court ruling actually placed Westminster above the Crown or not.
Well, if they did, then that's another major flaw in the statement, if that's the case. Yeah?
Yep. And with pets, replying to everyone else, saying it would just be another poll.
Stephen, considering this ruling, I really want to see those secret polls now. Nah, Gov's more interested in the coal mines.
No, I really want to see them all because I have specifically expressed this, that it's no the figures on Scottish independence they're trying to hide.
Right.
It's the figures who want English independence. There's only ever been one poll I'm aware of that has ever ran that sort of opinion poll in England, and at that point it was at 49%. It wasn't long after I think it was 2017, 2018, Nicola Sturgeon was pushing for Section 30 order at the time, but after the Brexit vote, we were getting now is not the time, let's see how Brexit panned out. Remember that one?
Yeah.
I think, for me, that's the real reason these polls have been marked secret and thrown into a safe somewhere, never to see the lights of day. Because taking back control is a big thing in England right now. If there was somebody going to start a proper independence movement in England right now, I don't think it would be difficult for them to get it up and running. I really don't. But the pro-independence movement in England hasn't got itself organised or up and running. There's a few groups that are interested in the idea, but take back control would be an easy one to sell to English people right now, but their MPs certainly would stand on their white, and they would use that ruling for the Supreme Court to say you can't, kids.
Yeah.
So Mark, to say I remember the poll. I'll probably got it right. I've probably got it on one of my iPads somewhere. You know, I'll have written it down somewhere over the last few years, and the details will be there somewhere.
Yeah, we now know that we've known that for ages was nonsense. And the nice thing is we had the wee bit of movie from the House of Commons where Dominic Raab basically said the opposite. He said, well, yeah, England is effectively subsidised by Scotland.
But as I say, I don't think the people of England quite understood that the implications of Brexit, and I don't think the people of England quite understand the implications of the Supreme Court ruling, and that's why I wanted really to talk about this today, because, as you know, David, looking at our geographical breakdown of the audience, not necessarily live, but on feedback as well. We've got a regular audience of 800 odd people in London.
Yeah, that's right. Strangely, yeah.
It's outside Edinburgh and Glasgow. It's the third biggest audience figure is in London.
Yeah,
it's important that the people there understand the implications of what was said for other parts of the United Kingdom, and the fact that the Supreme Court ruling actually has the GB Parliament as a separate entity from the whole, set it above the constituent parts of the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And the UK Parliament will do whatever it is to keep this Great Britain together, because Westminster needs all the constituent parts of Great Britain to service the debt that it's ran up by mismanaging Scotland, Wales, England and Northern Ireland for the last 100 years and beyond.
Yeah.
You know. Mr. Reid, would the international community recognise Scotland running a referendum anyway? No. They'll be looking for some. They will recognise some sort of they'll recognise probably a plebiscite election when it's made clear. The international community, especially in Europe, are already outraged at the Supreme Court ruling.
Well, Senator Mark Weller says that he's the constitutional expert for the UN. Was the constitutional expert for the UN, and what he said that Scotland could run a referendum under UN laws, and it would be fully recognised. Hang on, David. It would be fully recognised by the international community. However, that takes several things to happen. We need Nicola Sturgeon.
Hold on, David. Hold on. The Supreme Court covered that one with the oppressed people thing.
No, that's wrong. That's wrong. You're relying on the Charter saying that we have to be colonised or oppressed. No, we still have the right to self-determination under Charles one of the
Supreme Court tried to limit that by packaging up the conditions which need to be met to be entitled to self-determination.
I disagree, because the UN is very, very clear on the.
I disagree with David. I'm telling you what the court said.
Fine, I don't care what the court says.
We don't meet the criteria for self-determination because we're not oppressed. We have access to government for cultural and economic growth. They're the words.
Yeah. Okay.
But as I say, this isn't really about the effect it's going to have in Scotland. We already know that. I'm discussing this so that people in England and Wales understand it as well, because it applies to them.
However, under UN law, we could run a referendum and for it to be recognised as legal by the international.
A lot of hoops to go through before you get there.
However, we would require for Nicola Sturgeon to go and a team to go to the United Nations and ask officially for the referendum to be run under UN law.
They would need to simultaneously also make a deputation to the Council of Europe.
Yes.
Because the Council of Europe only recognises the democratic states, and the UK is still on the Council of Europe.
Yeah. And
would Westminster then quit the Council of Europe?
Yeah.
Because England alone, or England and Wales alone, couldn't service their debt.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they would leave the Council of Europe, and they would further impinge on the freedoms of the people of these islands.
Yeah.
As people spoke about the freedoms that have already been impinged on since 2003 under Tony Blair, and then subsequently afterwards with the current administration over the last 12 years. So, as I say, it's everybody in this audience that's Scottish already knows the implications of this ruling for the Scottish people. This programme was specifically to talk about the implications of it for the peoples of the other parts of these islands and get them to think about it. You know?
Just an answer to Martin there, why don't we go to the European Court? Martin, the reason why we're having this discussion is to just basically explain to the people of England who will be watching maybe after the show or whatever, right, that England is as much embroiled in this as we are, right? And to be honest with you, going to court just means that you're going to add in another 5 years into us becoming free from the Union.
Point to Mark Telfer, and that is any plebiscite for yes would likely engender international recognition. That's why the Westminster machine are trying to snuff out any path by any means, and that's quite prevalent actually, because we've got people like Keir Starmer and that saying they wouldn't recognise it anyway.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't allow a Westminster general election to be run as a plebiscite election. So would they just cancel the election and keep the Tories in power?
Yes. There you go. There's one way. Bring in another fixed-term parliament bill. This time, make it 50 years long, eh?
Yep.
But the important thing is recognition by other countries after we do this, after we run a plebiscite, right? And you can guarantee that whoever is in power in Westminster would be saying, no, we don't recognise it.
Let's take that back to the people. Right, let's take that back to the people.
Hang on. And then straight after, you've got Norway, Sweden, Denmark, all the different countries.
You're not getting this,
Scotland.
This isn't about, we're not supposed to be talking about who would recognise Scotland or what Scotland's path is right now. We're talking about the implications of this for the people of England. So I'm the people of England, and I say to the MPs of England, I want an independence referendum. And the MPs of England know that they can't service England's debt without the colonies. Mm-hmm. So they tell the people of England the same thing as the Supreme Court told us. Sorry, that would impinge on this Parliament's sovereignty over England.
Mm-hmm.
And no, you can't have a referendum because you don't meet the international standards that say you're oppressed. And that is the real importance of this.
And when they brought up the Quebec thing, I just went, oh, for goodness sake. Quebec was a region, it was not a country. Right? Scotland's a country. And it was before the Union. So therefore, we're in the Union.
And so was England.
Yeah.
And so was Wales.
That's right.
And the island of Ireland was one.
Yeah.
But that's of very little importance. The important part is that Westminster has placed itself as the gatekeeper and the owners of all four lands. And therefore that ruling places Westminster above all four peoples, and any attempt by any of the four peoples to break free of Westminster would impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over those peoples or those lands and would be denied. So that's basically what the Supreme Court ruling meant to the other parts of the United Kingdom. Now we can go on to talk about other things that will clear that up. And when talk about impinging on freedoms, what do you make of Sunak's wheeze that he's going to prevent health and social care workers from going on strike?
Yeah, I know, all right. So what's he going to do? Is he going to have an armed guard beside every one of them with the machine gun pointed at them? Right, get to work.
England's economy is 10 times the size of Scotland's. So is its debt.
Yeah, that's right.
But we're not talking about the size of England's economy. We're talking about the reasons that Westminster would give the English people for saying, no, you cannot leave Great Britain or the United Kingdom.
James, probably more important than that is the fact that Scotland's an exporting nation and England is an importing nation. So the size of the economy might be a moot point. However, it's how the economy is running. And if England is an importing nation, then the balance of payments looks awful.
Aye, but as I say, the idea of this programme was to make sure that the people of England who are in our audience understood that the implications of that ruling were for them. And the same applies to Wales. As you know, Northern Ireland's a different situation altogether. But as I say, the implications of England wanting independence on RUK would apply the same as the implications of Scotland wanting to leave RUK and that Supreme Court ruling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's the important part that we get across here. That's very important that the people of England understand that they could be denied that democratic right to choose as well on the same grounds as Scotland was denied that right of a democratic route to self-determination. It would impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over England. It would impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over Wales. And we already know, as it's been stated in the Supreme Court, it would impinge on Westminster's sovereignty over Scotland. And, the effect would be the same. The result for the calling of it would be the same. Would the English people actually want to break up the United Kingdom? Well, as I say, we don't have any polling on it.
Yeah.
Maybe it'd be interesting if somebody started running polling on it. Because obviously polls add weight of public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're supposed to show an expression of public opinion. So we'd like to see some real proper polling done down that road on England and the United Kingdom.
Yeah, not by you.
I'd like to see the circus involved as Westminster goes into full a propaganda mode to convince the people of England it was a bad idea after trying to convince the people of England that leaving the European Union was a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
As I've already said, take back control is quite big, especially in the North East. Why do you think Labour's offering everybody devolution of a sort? They're trying to fight back and save the Union as well. Because we have no idea if the people of England feel the same way about the Union. And as I say, that's why I think these polls have been buried. Social attitude studies help, but because of the way Britishness is portrayed, the English seem to be quite happy to flip between the two identities, whereas in Scotland it's 84% is only identify as Scottish. 61% is think that all decisions pertaining to Scotland should actually happen in the Scottish Parliament. And the way it's questioned, of course, there's certain reserved matters left out, like foreign policy and defence. So that, as I say, the implications of this on our UK is what this was all about, really. The comments going in all directions are really quite interesting, but no pertinent to the reason why we're doing this programme. This programme's aimed at the 780, 800 people that watch this in London.
James, can I just push in something there? Basically, James is doing the old thing of where any trade between Scotland and England would stop, right? I have a company that does 90% of its business with England, and I can assure you, I don't sell to the British government. I haven't dealt with them, right? Since way back, I did one of their main army garrisons with closed circuit TV and all the rest of it, right? So therefore, I deal with people, English people, and we would find a way around. And the reason why they buy off me is because I'm smarter, cheaper, and faster at doing what I do, and they trust me. They trust me to do it properly.
Right? When we look at recent independence countries that split for each other, generally what happens is over a period of time their trade diverges. But Mark, a good example is the Czech Republic, Slovakia. Prior to independence of each state, breaking up with Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, their trade, of course, was internal with each other. Once they became independent of each other, fast forward 30 years, and both the Czech Republic and Slovakia, major trading partner is the European Union. Okay. Now, England, Mark Telford's brought up a good point here, which is pertinent to point out to the people of England. England using Westminster as the de facto devolved government dilutes their understanding, fudges the finances, and feeds their superiority complex. I don't know about superiority complex there. There is definitely a bit of imperialism in there somewhere. But
Empire.
The rest of the points are very salient. The fact that they don't have a devolved government with Westminster as the oversitting body does fudge their understanding, and it probably will fudge their understanding of the Supreme Court ruling, actually, Mark. So that was a really good
James,
point.
I assure you that you're saying if what you're saying is true, Davey, the Brexit should be no problem. I tell you what, after we get our independence, Brexit won't be a problem, because we'll get in either through EFTA or we'll get in through becoming a member of the EU in our own right. So, and we might use one to get into the other. I don't know, right? But certainly we will have single market and customs union. So Brexit ceases to be a problem. The only problem for England would be the 17-foot high border fence that I'll gladly get my bucket and spade out, and I'll help to put up.
Ross has put up some stats. I'm not 100% sure we wrote them, but he can tell us. The UK Trade Info, Regional Trade and Goods stat. This is going to be HMRC then, I would imagine. Trade and Goods stats, 2021 quarter four, England trade deficit 133.4 billion, Scotland surplus of 2.2 billion. So there you go, folks. When you've got a balance of trade surplus, then you don't have any need to be in what do they call it again? Deficit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the term I'm looking for. So this fictional deficit that Scotland's carrying. According to the figure, Scotland's not carrying a deficit at all. Or wouldn't be running a deficit. So, thanks for that. But as I say, we're getting near the end of this one, David. As you know, as I say, I hope
Mr. E says, if England stopped trade with Scotland, what would that mean for England? Well, obviously there would be certain parts of it. Every time I see, I've said this before, every time I see a connector, an electricity connector going in between Scotland and England, I go, brilliant, right? A pipe, another pipe going between Scotland and England, brilliant. Reason being is because I'm in business and I realise that allows us to put a meter on after independence, and we'll do great business with England. I can assure you.
Trade surplus is not a fiscal surplus. You're absolutely correct, but we have run a huge trade surplus for the last 10 years, so the chances we would have had a fiscal deficit with good management, it just wouldn't have happened, James. But as I say, we're getting to the end of this one. I hope the people in England who have watched this get a grip of the bits, and the people of Wales, and how this Supreme Court judgment would affect them too. Right? And that was the whole point of this.
Now, do you see that after this discussion today, the real important discussion is the discussion over a plebiscite election of which way? Now, the guy we're getting on Sunday, he's got a few things to say on that, right? Okay, and I do recommend that you join us on Sunday to have the discussion that we'll have with Angus Brennan McNeill, SNP MP, and see what he has to say on it. Because the first time he mentioned it, he got his head ripped off by the SNP members, and all of a sudden now we're in the situation where Nicola Sturgeon says we're going to hold a plebiscite election.
Very good. But let's look at it the other way. All the boxes have now been ticked. And when this plebiscite comes up, whether it's a Scottish plebiscite election or a Westminster general election, two things that have to be really emphasised. One is that it is a single issue election for here in Scotland. And the other thing is that the international community are aware that all other democratic routes have been shut off, and that this is a plebiscite election on independence, so that the whole of the world is clear of what we are doing in that general election. That's very, very important. But as I say, the point of this programme was to point out the implications of the Supreme Court judgment for other parts of the United Kingdom. I hope this programme has helped. So, a couple of minutes left. Just in from a great day's shooting at Goyen-esque. Your countryside is gorgeous. Well, it seems you've had a good day. I'm sure some of the wee furry creatures haven't had such a great day. But from my point of view, mate, as long as you're going to eat them, then it's fair game.
Yeah.
Right. So it is. Margaret's looking forward to Sunday.
Yeah. Please tell your friends, get out of here.
James, no, I don't think, mate. I don't think we would have mismanaged our economy as badly as what Westminster has. I don't think we would have used the wealth of our natural resources the way Westminster would have. So no, I don't think that we would be running a fiscal surplus at all. Norway doesn't run a fiscal surplus, a fiscal deficit. Sorry, no surplus, a fiscal deficit. Norway doesn't run a fiscal deficit. Why should we be any different? Mental. Right.
In actual fact, you look at Scotland and Norway. Had we been in the same, had we already been independent, right? Scotland would be blooming charging away from Norway, because in actual fact, what we've got now is we've got the wind, we've got the tidal, we've got all that.
We're North Sea Shell producing their oil, but I'm not really wanting to get into this anymore. Now, remember, folks, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe. Hit bell notification, you'll get notified when we're coming on. Or you get notified when we go live, sorry. Because of the situation with the streaming platform, we can't actually give advance notice except for through social media outlet posts. If you're on Facebook and you're going to share this, give us a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes to shut this broadcast down and allow me to change the settings to public. Thank you very much. That just leaves one thing left to say, David.
Apologies for the man flu, and goodbye, Davy.
Bye, Davy. Bye, audience. Thanks for joining us.